When you study the most successful leaders, entrepreneurs, change makers, you will find a very common theme, and it is that they are all storytellers. So when I figured this out, I went looking for how do I get better at story. I remember the first time it happened, but everything that I found was books that kind of made story feel like, oh yeah, this is cool if you're writing a movie or writing a book, or you've got this like long form presentation, but I didn't quit there. I've been working on this solidly as a craft for, I would say since 2018, and I feel like I've cracked the way that you can insert story into just about anything and the ability to teach people how to do it really quickly. So I'm making this episode as a companion episode to earlier this week's Jonathan Cook's, how he, incorporates story into networking and stuff like that, so that you can be a better storyteller. I can't wait to share this with you. Welcome to the Property Management Frame Breakers podcast. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez, and I am here to introduce you to the folks in the property management space that have broken the frame of what you may believe was possible. This podcast is presented by Vendoroo. It is your all-in-one AI solution for resolving your maintenance needs. Let's go. Like I said in the intro, it was around 2018 when I was really kind of taking flight on my entrepreneurial journey, when I heard a podcast with, of all people, Kobe Bryant. And Kobe is a guy that I have always obsessed over, just because I'm really into these like fanatics, have this grit that are able to like outwork people. It's something that I've sought my whole life. So I try to copy their characteristics. And Kobe did not mince words when Lewis Howes asked him, what is next after basketball? Like, you were so obsessed with becoming a basketball player. What's next? And he said, I want to master the art of storytelling. That stayed with me. And I thought to myself, man, if this is so important to Kobe, I need to do this too. So I went off on this like quest, right? I think the first book anybody thinks about when they think of story is Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces. It has the whole like hero's journey of the heroes out there in the wilderness, and he finds this like big issue that then he has to he takes a loss over, so then he has to go and work on his craft. So he finds a mentor, and the mentor takes him through this like saga of like training, and then he finally meets this hero. The hero meets like the nemesis and overcomes it, and all this stuff happens, right? It's the story of Star Wars, Last of the Mohicans, Avatar, right? Like most of the big movies that we talk about is in that. People talk about it obsessively, but very few people, that doesn't seem relatable to me, right? So like I went forward and I read a bunch of these different books, and to me, story has really been boiled down to a couple of things that I think can help you a lot, right? Like most people, when they think of story, they're not even thinking about this hero's journey. They're just thinking about like, oh yeah, I like to tell people what happened over the weekend. And they think of it as a movie, right? Like they think that you have people's attention and people are going to listen to you and you can tell it. And that sometimes works in some contexts. But if you really understand the structure of story and how to dial up structure and dial it down and do these kinds of different things, it can really work for you. So here's the essence of story, right? The essence of a story means that it is something that takes you on a journey, right? Like you're describing something that you start thinking one thing and you end thinking another. And the components of it are, it has a character, it has a context, it has a conflict, it has a big idea, and it has a resolution, right? You hear that in Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Tales, the hero's journey. You learn about that if you read Building a Story Brand. Basically, any storytelling book will have its own version of that. For me, the one that really made that obvious is a book called Everyday Business Storytelling. Super practical. Highly recommend it. It's by Kurnoff and Lazarus, Everyday Business Storytelling. But this idea of context, character, conflict, big idea, resolution. I'll give you an example. I talk to a lot of property managers. That's the character. And they are trying to make their marketing more effective because property management often feels like a commoditized industry. You're getting beat up on fees and you're getting beat up on kind of like, do you really have any value, right? So they're trying to differentiate. That's the context. But in the world of property management, there is just, everybody kind of does the same thing, right? So like, how do you differentiate? That's the conflict. Well, my big idea is, right, this is the big idea, is that if you can create a story about the things that you do different, serving your clients' actual needs, and you make the client the hero, and the things that you do different, the things that, make them overcome, their conflicts, then you can start to really differentiate across all of your marketing around the things that you really invest in, whether they are like technology or people, or you have the lowest fees, or, you have the highest fees, right? Or you only do a specific asset class in a specific place, right? Like that is a big idea. And then the resolution is, teaching you how to tell a story and like this whole thing that I'm about to tell you, right? Like adding these frameworks, understanding them, the components of it, understanding the one big thing, and then creating a point of view around it. That's the resolution that I will take you on here, right? So those are the elements of the story I'm telling right now. And, there's many different ways I can deliver this, right? If I'm telling a really, really quick story, I can start with the conflict, right? I can start with property managers always get commoditized. Everybody thinks you're the same. Boom, conflict, right? Like that hits you. I also said the character there, property manager and conflict, right? And that is because, in this industry, things are like this, right? Like it's all kind of like seems jumbled up. Investors don't see value in you. That's the context. The big idea, like if you can tell a story really, really well, then you can differentiate, right? So that is me starting with conflict and then with character and conflict instead of context, right? If I wanted to start with context, I would be like, hey, doesn't it feel like everybody around you is selling the same exact thing as a property manager, right? So that's context and character, right? Like, the problem with that is that it becomes a race to the bottom when you're just kind of sounding like everybody else. That's the conflict. I find that if you insert story into your branding and your marketing and how you tell things, then you can break this differentiation, find, no longer be in a price comparison battle, create word of mouth, and build this business that you've always wanted, right? So that's the big idea and the resolution kind of thing, right? So like notice how you can dial it up and dial it down in different ways. And also notice that you always kind of start with context, character, conflict before you present the big idea. My favorite way to do that is called the ABT. This comes from the Narrative Gym for Business for Park Howell. It's like a 75-page book that you can read in an afternoon, and then you can practice this forever. I do this all the time. The ABT is a specific structure of character, context, and conflict that is the and, but, therefore, right? The and is kind of like character and context, right? You are getting somebody to identify with something by saying, hey, you're a property manager, and when you're out there in the marketplace, it feels like everybody is saying the same thing. But that's the conflict that you now interest. But if you sound like everybody else, people are just going to beat you up on price your whole life. That's why finding a way to differentiate is the number one priority in your business. That's the therefore, and then the therefore presents the big idea. For me, in the businesses that I've worked with, it's story that differentiates you across everything and makes things very clear and leads to a competitive advantage if you can get it right, right? So that is the ABT, and, but, therefore. You start with this thing that people can agree with. Oh yeah, I'm a property manager and I believe in this, right? Or it's like the world is this way and it feels like it's getting this way and it's going to make it, and that's where it's going, right? That's an and. But if we continue down this path, these problems are going to get way worse than we feel. That's the conflict. Therefore, let's find a way to eliminate this problem right now, right? Therefore, and then that leads to the big idea. That's the ABT. You can do that intro of an ABT in just about anything. Notice that I started this podcast. If you go back to the intro, it's an ABT, right? And I've continued kind of like every time you hear a but when I speak, that is me. I've likely set up an ABT and I'm about to present something that moves us to the next thing. The reason why that works is because when someone hears but, someone hears conflict, they lean in. That's very different to the idea that people resist this, right? Because they hear that when you say but and feedback, it neutralizes everything else. And yes, in feedback, starting with like something nice and then saying but completely erases what you're going to say next. But in story, it makes people lean in. It is signifying that conflict is coming, and that at the end of the day is always at the core of storytelling, right? Like, what is the conflict we are overcoming is right in the middle. If you get the problem, the conflict right, and you frame it in a way that people agree with, people will lean into your story and believe that you will have the right solution. So that is, the essence of storytelling, how to do it. But even when I give people those frameworks, they still struggle. They still ask me. Last week, I was talking to Reza, our founder, and he's like, man, you're so good at storytelling. And as a founder, I need to up my game in that, but I feel like I'm not consistent enough. And the frameworks that you gave me, they just don't work for me. How can I improve? And I told Reza a simple thing. Focus on the from to. Now, what does that mean? Notice that was an ABT, by the way. Now, what does that mean? Every story, like we started in the beginning, has a beginning and an end. If you, as the storyteller, are conscious about where the listener is beginning and where you want them to end, now you have a nice little confine of moving across that continuum, insert a little conflict in there, and get to the end, right? My from to in this presentation is that you go from thinking that story is this like concept that happens only when it comes to talking to your friends or writing a movie, to believing that you can just add elements of storytelling to anything and that will move the needle for you, right? So I'm moving across this thing. For Reza, he was trying to tell us essentially that we're starting to see, he went into the story in our all hands meeting about like how the market is starting to, like, our competitors are really coming after us, right? Like, I'm not going to say all the things that are coming behind, but there's a lot of like on sales calls and whatnot, the amount of mudslinging as a objection from that they heard from someone else has really ramped up, right? And that freaks people out. But what Reza was trying to say is, hey, this is part of it. First, they ignore you. Then they tell you you can't. Then they come after you. And then, and that means that you're doing it right, right? So like he was trying to tell this whole story, but he wasn't super clear on the idea that what he wanted us to hear was going from thinking that people coming out to us is like a problem, it's a threat, to believing we are right on schedule. The fact that people are coming after us, that they're resorting to mudslinging, means that they're scared, means that they're, like they don't have something better than we do, means that they got to like compete in this way, instead of like they're seeing that they're losing, right? That this is a good thing. Going from thinking that the market was competing against us was something to be scared of, to believing that this means that we have the advantage and we have them right where we want them, right? And he's like, oh, got it. If he would have been more clear about that, he would have rambled less about like the different things people are saying or whatnot, or he would have inserted him straight into this idea of like knowing that he's got to end with this idea that like this is exactly what's happening, right? Like the reason why this is happening is because they are now scared of our product. They can't compete on a better outcome, so they're just trying to tear us down, right? So like that makes it really, really clear. And now you can do this anywhere, right? Like just think this idea of a from to. Anytime I put together a presentation, like this one, I think of what my from to is going to be, the big idea of what I'm going people from to, like from believing that story is this like ethereal thing that happens in movies, to I can insert this anywhere, right? And then if I'm doing that, and I'm putting together a presentation, every slide that I do has a from to, right? Like every slide should be moving people across. Every like point, like in your outline, should be moving people on a from to. I'll be honest, for this one, right? The from to, I've already told you what it is. The first from to is understanding what story is, showing how you can do it, and giving you like a simple framework. So now it's like, oh, now I've got a little framework I understand. The next from to is like, okay, if I don't understand the framework, now all I have to do is understand the from to, and I can insert story anywhere. That's the part of the story where we're in right now. And then the final from to I'm going to give you is like how you add this to your marketing stuff, right? So like I'm moving you along a continuum of from tos that go from like not knowing what story is to knowing what it is, from not knowing, like how I can apply it to knowing how I can apply it, from thinking that, it has to be a complicated framework to thinking it's this like really small thing, from believing, okay, this is just a conversational thing, to believing, oh, I can add this to a whole strategy, right? So like, how can you add this? Just like Reza, when you are about to prove a point to someone, think to yourself, where are they starting? Where do I want them to end? Define that from to. If you're about to convey a message, if you're putting a presentation, if you're just on one slide, think about what the from to is. And I promise you that that's going to make you much more effective overnight. Now, how do we go from, okay, now I know how to do this as a tactical thing one-on-one, to this is an overall company strategy? That is creating a point of view around your company. I talk about this all the time. A point of view narrative is the one thing that can unite your whole company on a mission and bring in evangelists as customers, evangelists as partners, right? Like industry experts now start to see you as an ally instead of a threat or something, whatever. It's called the point of view narrative, right? And that serves as the bat signal of the change that you want to make in the world. What is a point of view narrative? A point of view narrative is a story about the way that the world is and the problems with it for the person that we're trying to help. How the world is changing and how that change is either going to make those problems way worse or it's going to make those problems completely go away because this change has created a new idea. And this new big idea, if it's done, erases the old things and makes a much better future. This is what the future looks like. That's a point of view narrative. Right? For Vendoroo, our point of view started off with property management, is going through all these different changes, right? Like you look around trade shows these days and you see all these new vendors. And the reason why is because the regulations have all changed, right? Like we went from being an industry that was like nobody talked about to Mayor of New York is getting elected on rent control, the affordability crisis, changing all these laws everywhere. It's making the rules of the game very different. Another change that is going through is that the great generational wealth transfer is happening, right? So like these clients that we've had for a long time, the way that we served them as boomers, they had certain preferences. Now they're passing their portfolios along to millennials. They have a completely different way of seeing the world. Their first question is, isn't there an app for this? Their second question is, why can't I do this myself? Their third question might be like, all right, cool. Like once I've done this, maybe you're worth something, right? But they're not, they expect you to text. They don't want emails or sending checks or, all these different kinds of things. So that's changing the client. And there's also, like that is making it much harder to run a property management company. The rules are getting tougher and the clients are expecting way more than ever. And we're in this like war on profits. But there's another change, AI, right? AI is now giving you new tooling that's going to allow you to meet these tougher rules and meet these elevated expectations. And for those that do it, they're going to win. For those that don't, they're going to be erased, right? Like that was our original point of view. And that point of view served a couple of different people, right? Like the visionaries, the ones that want to change the game. As we've realized what AI can really, really do, right? This idea that automating the mundane and allowing you to focus on the people side of the business, we realize that the real point of view here is a little bit different, right? It's this idea that right now, property managers have forever been feel like they're not enough. Owners have consistently asked for faster responses, quicker resolutions to things, and more control. And they don't realize that property management is so complex that if a property manager does that, they're going to risk dying by 1,000 cuts, right? Like the best thing that a property manager can do up until now is to create a process that they know they can execute and serve the people that they can serve with that process and tell the people that don't want that process exactly, I'm sorry, it's not you, it's me. Because or else they're going to break every promise. But what we're seeing now with AI is that AI is answering things immediately. So it's creating that quicker resolution. It's resolving issues quicker when, there's an AI that's troubleshooting, triaging, and creating work orders 24/7 and coordinating things 24/7. And it's available the moment that an issue happens. And when you can speak a process out into the universe, have an AI create the process, implement it, and now run with that process, it's really starting to give people control of like customization. Mass customization is happening. And so that obviously like whoever uses AI is going to give the market what it wants. But more importantly, while the rest of the world is like talking about AI taking jobs in property management, what we're seeing is like a giant burnout epidemic, right? Like the fact that we haven't been able to give our clients what they've been asking for is burning people out. It's destroying our workforce. Property management memes are all about mental health. And it's not funny, right? While the rest of the world is worried about AI taking jobs in property management, AI is actually giving the rightful, like the tools to actually do the job to the people that want to do well, right? Like AI is right-sizing jobs in property management. It's desperately needed. That point of view has had way more appeal than the FOMO point of view of the other one, right? Both are real, right? But like how you tell a story and how you get the person to see themselves in the character, as the character, in the context and the conflict, and what they really want to resolve and what their future state is, and the big idea, how it bridges those things, makes a big difference. And if you can have a point of view as a property manager, be it, like we believe that we serve investors first, right? Like investors, when they're dealing with property managers, they generally encounter these kinds of things. And what happens there, the problem is this, because if you don't have an investor first lens, then this is the way that this is the way that people are treating you. And therefore, like, these are the results that you get. And then you think all property management sucks and you might as well do it yourself. But then when you do it yourself, you burn out and you think that real estate investing sucks. So then you go like buy Bitcoin, right? But if you have an investor first lens, then you do things this way and you take care of the owner in a certain way, and you realize that the customer experience matters, because for investors, it's all about occupancy. So you do these kinds of things, and that allows the investor to stay long. And that's why we do it this way, right? Like that is a point of view for you. That point of view can be injected into every sales call. It can be injected into your marketing. If you have a podcast, then the theme of it should be like this, like investor first mentality kind of thing, right? So like that's how you inject a point of view and a story into everything you do. And if you start doing that, you start understanding the different pieces of the story, the character, the conflict, the big idea, the resolution, the future state of all this stuff. And you start understanding where all this stuff fits in the client journey, and every piece of content you make, now you know where it goes. So you go from thinking that like, I'm just making content, throwing it out into the ecosystem, to I'm making this super useful content and I know how to leverage it because I know where it fits in the brain of like the story that we're telling and stuff like that. And that, my friend, is 22 minutes of how you inject story into anything. Understand what it is: character, context, conflict, big idea, resolution. Understand that the core thing that you need to do is understand the from to. And once you understand the from to, then you build this like narrative around it. And if you want to do it as a company, you build a point of view around the things that you believe, and you go and evangelize it. I promise you, adding these tools will increase the outcomes that you're able to create, because people will all of a sudden go from understanding you to believing you and believing in you, and changing their behavior as a result. So, as my friend Park Howell, who wrote the ABT book, Narrative Gym for Business, which I recommend you buy, story on, my friend.